News Space Headquarters at the Kennedy Space Center in color. This is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and Harry Reisner in New York. And Dan Rather at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. In Washington, Roger Mudd, Bruce Morton, Hal Walker, Robert Shackney in New York, and Terry Drinkwater near Olympia, Washington.
Good evening. All of a sudden, it was a heart-stopper, this launch of Apollo 12. There was no show of the excitement to come in the way one event routinely followed another during the countdown this morning. The main anticipation was the arrival of the first president of the United States to watch a space launch from the scene. The first thing we saw this morning was the familiar steak and eggs breakfast for the crew. Mission Commander Pete Conrad, rookie astronaut Alan Beam, and Richard Gordon, the stay-behind fellow who circled the moon while the other two land on its surface. And here they are, the astronauts, as they have reached the White Room level, walk across that catwalk from the elevator to the White Room itself. First man in will be the commander, Pete Conrad. Dan Rather, I gather you're there at the Kennedy Space Center, there at helicopter side.
That's correct, Walter, and it's pretty drippy out here at the moment. It's been raining for about the past 15 minutes. Everyone who has one has his umbrella out, has his raincoat on. As you see, the president has his raincoat on. Mrs. Nixon is raincoatless, although a Secret Service man is opening up an umbrella now for both Mrs. Nixon and Tricia Nixon as they step off the helicopter.
Smiling faces. Coinciding with the president's arrival, a rainstorm swept the area, bringing the worst weather ever for a launch. But the decision was go, and shortly we'll watch the launch as Wally Schirra and I described it. Just after the Saturn Apollo disappeared into that low cloud cover, lightning struck near the spacecraft, although exactly how close is still being debated. You'll see and hear Conrad, that is, say a few seconds later that he has lost his inertial platform and the spacecraft power system has cut out.
10, 9, 8, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engines running, commit, liftoff. We have liftoff, 11:22 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Pete Conrad reports that your program is in. Tower clear.
The pitch and a roll program, and this baby is really going. Okay, we just lost the platform, gang. I don't know what happened here. We had everything in the world drop out.
Roger. +1.
Fuel cell lights and AC bus light. Fuel cell disconnect. AC bus overload 1 and 2. Main bus A and B out.
At a news conference after launch, astronaut Tom Stafford described the emergency procedures taken by the spacecraft crew.
At the time when they lost the 3 fuel cells and the 2 AC buses in the spacecraft, a lot of lights come on and the warning sounds go off. I think Pete Conrad and the whole crew should be really commended for keeping a cool head there and reacting just like they should, since our own instrument unit went out and started to spin on him. However, he was looking at the rate gyros as the backup instrument, made his own analysis real fast and said, let's press right on. At that time, then Al Bean was able to reset the fuel cells, and by the time that they got past staging, they had the AC buses back on the line working 1, 2, 3, 4. I think this also brings out the point that when everything just went boom like that suddenly as far as the loss of power and all the other indications is an example of why we have experienced test pilots flying these vehicles.
President Nixon watched the launch outside in the rain. Sometime later, when everyone had caught his breath again, the president visited launch control.
America, the United States, is first in space. We're proud to be first in space. We don't say that in any jingoistic way. We say it because as Americans, we want to give the people of this country, and particularly our young people, the feeling that here is an area that we can concentrate for a positive goal. Concentrate and be proud of being Americans. Be proud of what we have accomplished, not only for ourselves, but for future generations and for the whole world.
Well, all's calm now. The spacecraft has left Earth orbit and is on its way to the moon.
Well, Houston, Chris says he doesn't think you guys are the same age as when you got up this morning either. He is absolutely correct. In fact, I wish you guys play us that DSE tape back tonight. All LP kept saying was, there's power on the buses, there's power on the buses. And every light on the right-hand side was lit. I kept thinking, why is he saying that to me? That's beautiful. I say, hell, there's so many lights on, I can't read them all to you.
This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News, Kennedy Space Center.
The flight continues smoothly, but the astronauts scheduled an early special check of the lunar landing craft to make sure it wasn't damaged in the shake-up on liftoff.
Hi, this is Mrs. Betty Jones, back from a family fishing trip for a biz demonstration. Did you catch anything?
A whole week's worth of things like fish blood, grimy T-shirts.
Biz soaks out a lot of stains that you can't wash or bleach out. Even stains that other pre-soakers don't get out. Let's soak them. Well, Betty?
Biz did it. Stain's gone.
And the T-shirt?
It's so white, it's hard to believe.
Try Biz. Biz is better.
Hi. I brought the potato salad. I got the cake.
I got the dishes.
You didn't bring your good china.
No, it's just for the everyday stuff.
What a shine. I can see myself in it.
It's not just the china. It's lemon fresh joy.
Really is lemon. Smells clean.
Lemon Fresh Joy cleans dishes clear down to the shine. And isn't that a nice reflection on you?
The nationwide protest against the war, now in its second day, has been distinguished so far by nonviolence. In Washington, the major demonstration, a 40-hour-long march against death, still is solemnly underway, its participants passing the White House at the rate of 1,000 an hour. Bruce Morton reports.
George Gilbert. William Hutt. Dwight E. Bozeman.
This kind of gray day seems right for a funeral march, and the single file of marchers has been passing the White House here for hours now, all last night, throughout today. Stared at by crowds of the curious across Pennsylvania Avenue, stared at, too, by White House staff members behind this iron fence. Each marcher calls out the name of a serviceman killed in the war as he passes. They've been starting out through this crowded, quiet day from here, across the Potomac, just outside Arlington National Cemetery. Most are young in field jackets, Navy work clothes, the oddly military uniform of an anti-military generation, but perhaps one in 15 or 20 is older. And the march ends here, at the west front of the Capitol, where inside the Republican and Democratic leaders of the Senate today praised the motives of the demonstration, its ideals, and its order. They cross in front of the Capitol from the House side to the Senate, and then come down the steps for the last act in the morality play they call the March Against Death. Each marcher takes the placard he has worn bearing the name of a serviceman killed in the war, a name he has shouted when passing the White House, and puts his placard in a coffin. Those will be carried in the vanguard of tomorrow's mass march. Once, as the dead names fell to the coffins, a young girl sang.
Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time ago.
A battalion of U.S. Marines has moved into the Capitol. They've worked mostly out of sight, setting up a command post, bringing in riot equipment. Capitol Police have closed off that area. The men will sleep inside the Capitol tonight. And 300 Army paratroopers have moved into the Justice Department. The government refused to allow photographers inside to film them. Newsmen saw only brief glimpses through the gates. It was at Justice that the closest thing to trouble came, a demonstration sponsored by the Yippies, not the mobilization, directed not against the war, but against the Chicago trial of 7 radical leaders. At one point, marchers refused to clear a street, but as police moved slowly forward, it started to rain hard and the crowd thinned quickly. There was no violence. Police made no arrests. Meanwhile, the work went on at the site of tomorrow's mass rally, setting up the stage, the sound equipment, the same sound men who did the Woodstock Rock Rally. And the people who will fill that space kept arriving, pouring into reception centers like these, waiting cheerfully for someone who knew about housing, who knew when the shuttle bus would come. It rained hard and it hailed some, but the single file of marchers kept moving. Weather was not important. What they were doing was. They're very serious about the march. It's why they've come. Bruce Morton, CBS News, Washington.
Washington remained the focal point of the three-day protest, but demonstrations also took place in many other locations. For example, in New York City's Central Park. Robert Shackney reports.
The crowd was far smaller than the 10,000 people the sponsors had talked about. But the gray, drizzly day was hardly the right weather for a mass outdoor gathering in New York's Central Park. It was surely a different kind of anti-war protest. The principal symbol, black balloons, to represent American soldiers who had died this year in Vietnam. American flags, quite deliberately, were conspicuous by their presence, to make the point that those who oppose the war are as patriotic as those who support it. The crowd was overwhelmingly but not exclusively young. The sponsors, many of those who had worked in the McCarthy and Kennedy campaigns. The ceremonial high point, the entire gathering lying down on the wet ground, to symbolize the thousands of GI dead in 1969. And as a trumpet sounded taps, the balloons were released in the air. The black ones for the dead, the white ones for those who would yet die in this first year of the Nixon administration.
The Senate Armed Services Committee today unanimously approved creation of a draft lottery. The legislation, already passed by the House, now goes to the Senate floor. The committee action came after testimony by Defense Secretary Laird that a lottery can be set up within 45 days after the bill becomes law. In its first year, however, he said it will cover the ages of 19 to 26, so that no draft-eligible young man escapes liability during the transition to a 19-year-old's lottery. South Vietnamese fighter pilots flying in bad weather accidentally bombed their own troops in heavy close-in fighting near the Bu Prang Special Forces camp today. Early reports say that 20 South Vietnamese were killed and more than 50 wounded in the battle. How many of the casualties were caused by the accidental bombing is not known. Field reports say 2 American advisors with the South Vietnamese were critically wounded. One reportedly was abandoned on the battlefield by government troops. An official of the Viet Cong, Madam Nguyen Thi Binh, said today that she favors the idea of a referendum to find out if the South Vietnamese people in government-controlled areas are for or against the Saigon regime. She said there would be no need for a vote in Viet Cong areas since the people there support the guerrillas. Allied spokesman dismissed the statement as an attempt to weaken the nationalist movement in South Vietnam. The referendum had been suggested by South Vietnam General Duong Van Ninh.
So you really think that by brushing your engine clean, you'll help improve your car's mileage? You're on the right track, but you're cleaning it all wrong. Help clean inside your engine with mobile detergent gasoline. We clean up what most gasolines make dirty.
Norelco shavers are for guys who are proud of their beards. For guys who think their beards are as tough as they come. The Norelco triple header is for guys who think no electric shaver could ever shave as close as a blade on beards like theirs. The Norelco triple header is for beards as tough as they come. It's even for a beard like yours.
Senate debate on the Supreme Court nomination of Judge Clement Haynsworth continued today. Roger Mudd reports from Washington.
The debate, such as it was, moved into its second day in the Senate with attendance on the floor low. The largest and most attentive audience was in the public galleries, which were filled most of the day with anti-war demonstrators who had been admitted on passes from their home state senators. Down on the floor, Republican Senator Javits of New York surprised no one with his speech of opposition to Hainsworth, whose racial views, he said, would drag the court back 15 years. Republican Senator Marlowe Cook of Kentucky insisted that a judge's decisions are not relevant, that a Supreme Court nominee should be judged solely upon his qualifications. But it was the speech by Republican Len Jordan of Idaho which created the news today. Jordan, a conservative known for his independence, had been among the uncommitted. But today the Nixon administration lost his Hainsworth vote because of what he called the nominee's ethical insensitivity. Jordan said pressure on him began to build up when he told the Attorney General October 20th he was voting no.
From then on, I began hearing from my friends out in Idaho, and it was stimulated by calls from various sources in the administrative branch.
So it was administration pressure once removed, then?
Yes.
And was it put on the basis of party loyalty or what?
Pretty much so. Pretty much so. Don't turn the president down. You've been a pretty regular kind of voter, and I have. But this is a matter of don't let the president down. And I regard this matter of responsibility of confirming judges as a matter that transcends partisan politics.
The administration was chagrined at Jordan's decision. One pro-Hainsworth senator said, "We could have had his vote." But the uncommitted bloc is still largely Republican, which means President Nixon, despite the murky outlook, has a running chance to save the nomination. Roger Mudd, CBS News, Washington.
The Pentagon said today it is cutting back production of the C-5A airplane, the super transport whose development costs have run about $2 billion over estimates. The announcement said that 81 of the planes will be ordered rather than the planned 120, and that the reason for reduction is a budget squeeze. The Air Force announced today that it is temporarily grounding its entire fleet of 224 F-111 jet planes because of new flaws discovered in 2 of them. The new problem involves a duct carrying hot air to anti-icing systems. The swing-wing airplane has been in trouble during much of its 9-year history. More than a dozen have crashed, including 3 tested in Southeast Asia. Spokesman doubted any connection between the air duct problem and those crashes. The Commerce Department reported today that before tax profits of the nation's corporations dropped $3 billion in the third quarter this year. That's the sharpest drop since the economic slowdown of early 1967. Government economists said it was an indication that the campaign against inflation is beginning to show results. The averages were off again on the New York Stock Exchange. Volume was 10,580,000 shares. The New York index lost 19 cents. The American Exchange Index was down 6 cents. In London today, Prince Charles, the future King of Britain, celebrated his 21st birthday with a jet-set party and an ancient pledge to God and country. He received a pay raise of $192,000 a year, and although he still cannot marry without the Queen's consent, he remains what the society people call one of the world's more eligible bachelors.
Someday, you'll probably smoke a cigarette that looks and tastes this way. But why put it off? True is here today. Do it. Discover what True can do. Discover how True can satisfy you. Satisfy you with good taste. Satisfy you with an air filtration system and built-in mouthpiece. Satisfy you with reduced tar and nicotine. Don't put it off. Don't put off till someday what you can smoke today. More and more smokers are enjoying True every day. Shouldn't you? Shouldn't your brand be True today?
The White House today disavowed any role by President Nixon in Vice President Agnew's attack on television news coverage. News Secretary Ronald Ziegler said the president did watch the live broadcast of Agnew's speech in Des Moines last night and has great confidence in the vice president. Agnew appealed to the public to register their complaints with the networks, and the initial public response generally endorsed the vice president. CBS in New York received 8,500 telephone calls, 4,700 of them supporting Agnew. ABC and NBC reported similar response. We have a film report now on the reaction of the new chairman of the Federal Communications Commission and some other nationally known officials.
Did you have any hand at all in the preparation of that address?
I did not, no.
Might we see more tighter, stricter regulations from the Federal Communications Commission?
Well, it's interesting, first of all, the Federal Communications Commission doesn't even license these networks. It has been suggested that because we license them, we have a thumbscrew of some sort on them. We don't license the networks. I don't believe there's been any suggestion on anybody's part that we're going to intimidate them or do anything of that sort. I think that what the Vice President asked was that they examine themselves to really see whether they felt they were doing the best possible job. And I think your appearance here is a good indication. You've spent a great deal of time coming over here and setting up so that you can get my comments. And I think that's a legitimate pursuit of news, and that you're to be commended for that.
I think it is true that the control over the media is in the hands of all too few men. I personally do not believe the answer to that is by substituting a different small group of men. I think the answer to that is by opening up the media to all Americans, all the frustrated people who've been writing me, who've been writing you, the people to whom Secretary Finch referred, as frustrated because they do not hear their aspirations and their problems expressed. There's great strength in this country, but we must call upon it. And I, for one, would far prefer to see more commentary on television. Balanced, fair, all points of view expressed, rather than less. I think the solution is not to become more bland. I think the solution is to become more relevant, more related to the real world.
We know that men cannot separate their own feelings from what they say. I can't, you can't. And if you're getting the news all from New York, you're getting a certain slant in the news. Whereas if you had news programs originating in New York, news programs originating in Chicago, news programs originating in the Rocky Mountain region, news programs originating in California, you would have a cross-section of our nation. I think this would be good. You'd find differences of opinion. You might differ with Walter Cronkite or any of the rest of them on some of the things, not on all of them. And I don't say it should be competition or conflict, but it's a serious problem. I think that the television has performed a great service, and I think that their educational programs, but surely the hatchet job they did on us in Chicago indicates that there can be some improvement.
There seems to be emerging a deliberate campaign of abuse to be heaped upon anyone who holds different views or different opinions than the administration. I think it's unfortunate. I think it's a disservice to the kind of constructive dialogue that we need at a time of great national division. And the kind of constructive dialogue that the leaders of our country ought to be initiating, not defeating.
How would you define the role of the Vice President in the administration at this point?
Well, I suppose we can all think of the colorful words, but to use them would to be adopt the role. And I'm not inclined to do so. It's clearly deliberate. It clearly has the approval of the President. The President has had ample opportunity to disavow it. He has not done so. And it's interesting that on the same day, the President should follow the high road to the Capitol, and the Vice President should follow another road.
Since you give your little boy enough food from man, does he still need to take vitamins? You never know. You've given him a big ham sandwich, a real mouthful, and his favorite peanut butter, a piece of fruit. But you see how it is. That's why we make one-a-day vitamins, so you can be sure he'll get all the important vitamins he usually needs to take. Give your whole family one-a-day vitamins, because you never know.
Truck drivers know the best places to eat. Nothing fancy, just good wholesome food and plenty of it. Sometimes too much. Then you go bouncing along with a stuffed-up stomach and a smoldering case of heartburn. When you have to do that all night, you learn what to do about it. How to unstuff your stomach and put out your heartburn. So most truck drivers not only know the best places to eat, they also know the best places to drink.
Out in the state of Washington, we came across an office holder who has chosen to pay off his campaign debts in an unusual way through hard blue-collar labor. Terry Drinkwater has the story.
Can you have Helen come in, and then can we have a staff meeting with Sam and Don and Frank and Kate and Sally, please? Okay. Thank you.
Meet Ludlow Kramer, the Secretary of State of the state of Washington, an office with considerable responsibility. Head of Urban and Youth Affairs for the state, the man in charge of regulating corporations here, the keeper of the seal of the great state of Washington, the Secretary of State by day.
Okay, because we're getting kind of late, you know. I've got to go to my important job in a little while. Okay.
And by night. The Honorable Secretary Kramer issues directives to state employees by day, and by night he takes orders, usually fill her up. He is moonlighting. The reason? To pay off $10,000 in campaign debts, the high price of politics. What are the motivations behind your coming here to a filling station as opposed to some other kind of job you could get?
Well, I have been criticized by people saying, why don't you get a job that's a little more dignified? What happens is that so many of your companies deal so directly with government that you fall into a very easy trap of a conflict of interest. I've actually had offers in the last 2 weeks of retainers. And what do I do, sir, with that retainer? Well, we just give it to you, and if we ever need any help or if something happens in the legislature, give us a call. I can't do that. It's not right.
How do you like the work here?
It's fine. It's fine. I like the people. They're surprised, a lot of them. I'm kind of tired. I'm not as in good shape as I thought I was, having been a guy behind a big desk. It's good. I keep cutting my hands because I think Detroit has a phobia of hiding things on cars, and they must stay up all night trying to figure out how to keep them away from service station attendants, so I keep cutting my knuckles up on the cars, but it's fun.
As Secretary of State, he earns $15,000 a year. To support a family and pay off campaign debts at the same time is impossible, he says. The job in the gas station pays $2.50 an hour, and he's working here 40 hours a week. And what has Lud Kramer decided about his own future? He has decided not to run again for Secretary of State in 1972. Terry Drinkwater, CBS News, near Olympia, Washington.
That's the news. This is Harry Reasoner, CBS News. Good night.